Hey, welcome to the Reddit time. What's a really awkward situation that everyone can relate with? Let's start. When you start to tell a story in a group but in middle of sentence realize that no one is actually listening and ever, so slowly you get quiet and hope no one took notice. Edit. Wow, seems someone did take notice this time. I asked myself a few times what might be wrong with me because of this, but I also could imagine I'm not the only one this is happening. But I don't think that something is wrong with you. It's just all too often that people just don't think so much. I think people in general mean no harm. They may be wearing this moment just not as emphatic or don't have the antenna in the everyday hustle and bustle to notice something that doesn't jump in the face with a neon sign, figuratively speaking. Or as for this case, notice someone's contribution that is not bursting with self-confidence or provides the perfect introduction, but perhaps acts rather a bit introverted. When they don't realize that you were getting quiet, at first you think, good, nobody noticed, but seconds later you start to feel bad that nobody was really paying attention to you, not even hearing that you were making noises, and that feels awful. Whenever I notice that happening, I especially look the person telling the story in the eyes like, it's fine, just pretend you were only telling the story to me all along. I try to be that person too, but it backfires because I'm not the person that they wanted to listen to them, so they just stop telling the story anyway. Feels bad. When you've had multiple interactions with someone but you can't remember their name, but it's gone too far to admit you've forgotten it, so you just have to call them love or mate forever. I have a trick for this. Start being more loving to them, eventually getting into a relationship. As this moves further, propose and they'll say yes. And then when you're getting married, wait till the pastor turns and says, and will you, person's name, marry your name? And boom, you now know their name. Standing there while two people talk about something you don't know about. Even worse when you are wanting to leave the conversation but feel like you need to have an excuse to leave. When you try to contribute to a conversation and someone cuts you off multiple times. And you patiently wait for your turn to speak even though it already was. But by the time the air is clear, the subject has already changed and what you were going to say is now irrelevant. I used to be a habitual cutter-offer when I was younger. I wasn't trying to be rude, I was just excited for what I had to say. I've reformed that behavior now, but if I notice this happening to someone else, I'll make sure to call attention to the person trying to talk. What was that, John? Or something along those lines to make sure everyone is heard. When you're having a conversation with someone and you don't hear what they say, so you ask them to repeat and they do. But you still don't hear it and ask them to repeat again and they do. And you still don't know what they said. Do you ask them to repeat again and maybe still not hear it? Pretend you heard it and nod your head and hope it's an appropriate response. Stab yourself in the eye with a pen to create a diversion and change the subject. Just laugh, say yeah, and hope they didn't just tell you their dad just died. Literally the worst thing that can ever happen to a human being. No, the worst is when they get angry at you for not hearing it, or not understanding it because they speak the worst English you have heard in your life, but they think they are good at it. And the thing they said was a pun, and the point of the pun is lost because bread and breast really doesn't sound the same enough for it to be funny. So you just go, huh? For the second time, and then they roll their eyes and leave, thinking you are the stupid one. Saying hello or how are you to somebody and getting 100% ignored. Worse when someone else you know is there too and notices you're getting ignored. That's when I just say, good talk. Helps me feel like I save face just a bit. When you're walking past coworker and you've already said hello earlier, everyone's making that weird flat smile. That walk down a long hallway toward each other where you've clearly seen the other person, but they're too far away to say something, so you do the awkward look around until you get close enough to say hey and keep walking. You say bye to them and then hit to walk into the same direction, glance at each other and give an awkward smile, the longest walk. That's when you pull out the I forgot something or initially go in the wrong direction to save yourself a tremendous amount of discomfort. I work in an office above a warehouse, and the hallway goes the length of the entire warehouse. It's like that never-ending hotel hallway in The Shining. There are departments all along the hallway, so people come out of doors from each end. It's the worst to start talking from one end as someone comes out from a door at the other, and I'm just praying inside they enter into another room before we get to each other. But it never happens. We always end up crossing paths, but until that point I'm looking everywhere but at the person. Looking into other offices, pulling my phone out for no reason to look at it. The only savior is when you have a box of paperwork in your hands that you can focus on, and then when the person is within 5 feet of you, say hey and keep walking. It's utter misery every time I have to go into the hallway, which is a lot. Even worse, when a coworker spots you in a store and starts talking to you, but you don't recognize who they are because you are not used to seeing them outside of work. You don't want to ask them who they are because then you'd look like a fool, so you need to pretend to know who they are during the entire conversation. When you are finishing up at the checkout and the cashier puts the notes on top of the receipt and then coins on top of that. Then the next person steps up and you are fumbling, trying to disassemble the stack in your hand, gather your shopping, say thanks and move away at the same time. In the UK it's extra sucky because you bag your groceries yourself. If you aren't quick enough, you have to do all of what you mentioned as well as quickly finish the packaging while everyone stares at you waiting for you to hurry. When I was a cashier, I made it a point to hand them their coin, wait, hand them their currency, and unless requested otherwise, I put the receipt in the bag for this very reason. Same here. A manager taught me that. I was so annoyed with him at the time, but now I realize what a good tip it was. Being at a friend's house as a kid and the friend's mother starts yelling at your friend. Being at a friend's house as a kid and the friend's father walks in only wearing underwear. The opposite as well, having a friend over and your parents do this. Or worse, your parents try and involve your friend in the argument, asking them if they would do that or would their parents put up with it. So f***ed up. That awkward moment when you and somebody else try to let each other speak, but you both try speak at the same time and just keep failing. That would be a Skype or Teams moment. It's happened to us countless times, especially since we are all now working from home. Sorry, go ahead. Silence. When you think someone waves at you and so you wave back, but they were waving at someone behind you. Not long ago at church we were asked to turn and greet people. I turned around and the guy said hi to me and stuck his hand out to shake. I went for it and realized he was talking to the woman beside me. She and I both ended up with a hand in his hand at the same time trying to shake it. They both looked at me and I quickly turned around and pretended it didn't happen, which made it more awkward. And then rest of the service I couldn't stop laughing about it. This is standard for me. Awkward church laughter is the worst, especially if you are trapped between people and can't excuse yourself to leave and get a handle on it privately. Also particularly bad if it happens during a funeral. Just pretend you wave at someone behind them, then the person behind them would wave back at you, but you should pretend to wave at the person behind them, and so on and so forth, until everyone is uncomfortable and just go home. You ever clogged the toilet in somewhere that wasn't your house? Oh man, I show up to pick her up for our first date. I asked if I could use her toilet before we left and only had to pee. Speaking of, why the hell doesn't everyone have a plunger? It's a common item, and there really isn't a reason not to have one. Most people I know had the logic that because clogs rarely happen, they don't bother buying a plunger. That's like not putting an alarm in a bank because people barely break into banks nowadays. When you walk out of the store empty-handed, feeling like you've just stole something, it's worse if you make eye contact with a cashier, or worse, the security guy. And you went in the store with a bag from another one. You know it, and I know it. You should go to jail. Walking through a doorway only to catch your clothes on the handle and have it slingshot you backwards. Happens only when you are angry. Same with trying to slam a door out of anger and it somehow gets magically slowed by the air resistance and it just closes a little harder than normal. Or the opposite when you are having an argument but you've actually not hit it up but decide to close the door and then fair closes with the strength of 1,000 suns. When you reply to a stranger who says hello but then realize they were on the phone and not speaking to you. Happened to me just yesterday and I didn't get any sleep last night as I couldn't stop reliving the moment. Airports have made this one so much more common, it's really annoying, especially if you work in retail. When you're saying goodbye to someone and then you both end up walking in the same direction, or when you turn and walk into a wall with people watching. Edit. My first 2 words ever. So glad my forms of awkwardness resonate with others. Also when you realize you've forgotten something and need to turn around, but you don't want to just turn around abruptly because that would make you look insane. So you do a little performance where you get your phone out, pretend to check a message, sort of mime, oh, and then turn around. Or cross the street and then turn around to throw any observers of the scent. Ever drag your shoe across the tile floor and have it make a loud red fart sound so everyone in the room looks at you? Then you insist it was your shoe and try to make the sound again, but nothing happens. Yeah, that. And leather couches. And then you try to keep moving around to replicate it to show everyone that it's actually the couch, but it never does, so you're just sitting there avoiding eye contact. No, never happened to me. When you say a funny joke, but all you get is silence. I did this on a Zoom staff meeting yesterday. It was worse in line, somehow. Now you're that guy in the office. When you're walking and almost trip for no reason and look back at the invisible stick that you tripped on. And then you do a quick check of your surroundings to see if anyone saw. When you go for a hug but the person goes for a handshake, so you start with a handshake but do a weird hug at the same time with your hands in each other's crotches. I just skip all that and go right for the crotch. When someone asks, "What's going on?" and you respond, "Good, you? How are you?" "I'm fine, what about you?" "Great, you?" Watching a sex scene with your parents. Visited my aunt and uncle 7 years ago and we were hanging out watching TV. My uncle clicks through channels and stops on Harold and Kumar escape from Guantanamo Bay. Within minutes is a shaved posse party scene. My aunt and uncle sit there in silence watching, not saying anything until the scene is over while I sweat bullets. If you put an acorn between my butt cheeks, I could have cracked it. A few months ago I visit again. Uncle flips through channels. It's Starship Troopers. Within minutes is a sex scene and the boobies are out. I'm not visiting anymore. Go to wash your hands and the water comes out at 1,000 miles an hour, splashing your crotch. You are of course at work. Thank you for watching this video, I appreciate it a lot. If you have anything to add, you can comment down below. Also subscribe to my channel, give me a big thumbs up and see you in the next video.